welcome to our next episode of our Riff Offs. You've got Ashley Elizabeth here along with Rochelle, and we are so excited to start 2025 with you. Rochelle, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I don't think I could be vibrating higher than right now.
Yeah, no, I really feel that. I feel like 2025 is just kind of in itself in this year of vibrating with this really high energy. I'm really excited for the people who are in our Transformational Truth group. So if you're not in there yet, make sure to check out the link that we've got here and join our Facebook group. We've got some amazing things that are going to be happening in this group. And then just between you and I, we've got a lot of things happening. Like you've got a lot happening with Wildly Free Publishing that I've gotten to now be a part of. And I don't know, there's just a lot that I feel like this year itself is vibrating really high. So I'm excited to spin our wheel for the first time in 2025 and to see where this is going. Before we spin it though, do you want to talk a little bit about something that we've got coming out for Transformational Truth a little bit later this spring, where we're putting all the things together?
Yes. Yeah, I would love to. So we get to make a book.
Mm.
And I'm a bookmaker now. So I'm so excited. And it's really a reflection of the power in the waiting.
Mm.
And I know we that's one of the topics, not the exact title, but so we're gonna take everything that we've been working on and we're going to turn it into something tangible where you can touch it and you can thumb through the pages and land where you're supposed to land. So it's not going to be a book where you have to go in order, which I love. I don't know if you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books, but I love books where you get to choose your own adventure. And this is going to be where you land is where you're meant to start in the book.
Mhm.
And so I'm just really excited that we get to create books for Transformational Truth. It allows you to be in a space when sometimes maybe social media isn't the place that you can be in that space. I know a lot of you have expressed that you want to be in the space more and you haven't figured out how to. So I hope that this is a solution for a lot of you, that it's going to be a beautiful book. So that's what we have coming in a couple of months. I'm
I'm
so excited.
so excited. And that all of those things are going to be based off of conversations that we've had based on spinning this wheel. So when we do these riff offs, we spin a wheel that has all of these different topics. And whatever one we land on, you get our real, raw, and very honest reactions, because when you are here with us, this gets to be an expectation-free space where we journey into the heart of transformational truth together. So let's take a look at our wheel.
I love the wheel so much
Oh, I
because
do too.
it's an invitation to be vulnerable on a topic we have no preparation for.
Oh, none. There's not pre-research that has gone into any of
Oh
this.
no.
They've just come from lived experiences and from ideas that we get from people, which, to be honest, if you've got an idea for something that you would love to see on our wheel, we would also love for you to comment on this podcast or to jump into our Facebook group and let us know what topics you'd be interested in. So, oh, Rochelle, here we go. First spin of 2025.
Woohoo! Sometimes we have to leave to receive. All right.
I am really excited about this. And I think when we talk about sometimes we have to leave, I think it's really interesting. So our last topic that we had done, it was all about capacity, right? And it was all about what it looked like to cultivate capacity. And so if you haven't checked out that podcast episode, make sure to do that. But one of the conversations that you and I had off screen, away from all of this, and that I actually never had a chance to go back and write about, is that sometimes when we're talking about leaving, it's not necessarily leaving a physical space, although it might be, or leaving a relationship, although it might be. But it also can just be about what it means to say goodbye, right? Or to say this is the end of something that is no longer serving us. And so I think you have done a great job of that in my life, just saying is this something that needs to continue to take up space? Because sometimes we have to make space to receive the things that are for us. And so I'm really excited that this is the topic that we have to talk about. It feels like, as usual, it is a very apropos segue to our conversation that we had about capacity. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, ironically, before we spun the wheel, I was going to say I feel like 2025 is the year of rewards. I feel like for so many of us, a lot of hard work, a lot of hard places, a lot of hardship, a lot whatever, that you all have worked so hard to get to where you are today. And a lot of that is making those choices to leave, to receive. And I love that you painted the picture that it's not always like leaving a space or leaving a person or da da da. There's so many things that we need to leave within ourselves. You know, that phrase holding on a baggage, or, oh, I entered the relationship with baggage, or, you know, whatever that context is that it's all about permission giving. Ugh. And it's about saying, being in that space and saying, thank you so much for being a part of my journey. You know, I believe in the power of gratitude, even in the things that we're ready to say goodbye to.
Absolutely.
And it's being in that space and saying, thank you so much for being what I needed, when I needed. And we don't need to have that relationship anymore. And I use this in so many aspects, whether it's talking to people about money issues, or it's talking about people with relationship issues, or anything like that, or even just those internal things, is that you're not going to be able to receive until you make space for it. How do you make space for it? You have to, you know, dust the cobwebs away. You have to physically, you know, like say, it's okay to have empty spaces. That's
It
where I'm
is.
really trying to get to. We live in a society where we have to fill every second, every minute, and da da da. And so just kind of taking that, create those empty spaces and allow yourself to sit in the empty so that you can reflect on what you want to put in those spaces when the time is right. But don't ever feel the need to always have it filled. And I think that's where the power of leaving comes from. And it's uncomfortable, and people want to avoid discomfort.
Oh, they do.
But I
Absolutely.
promise through experience, temporary discomfort makes the greatest spaces to receive the greatest joy. And there's a lot I could say on this topic, but I want to bounce it back to you.
Well,
Um,
I have two thoughts. So the first thing, like as you're talking about some of that, I got to thinking about my visit to Colorado last summer, right? And you had been asking me for years to come and visit Colorado, right? And I think that so many times in people's minds, right, when it comes to, leaving or saying goodbye or whatever, there's an image, right? And I've seen it floating around on social media. I'm sure I'm going to post it in our Facebook group. But there's an image of a human of some sort, man, I don't know, standing in a cage, and you're watching him pull the last bar into
yeah,
right? And the idea of this image is that we build our own cages, right? That like, yes, life circumstances happen, and I'm not saying that there isn't plenty of that is very hard and that is outside of our control. But the story that we write about what's happening, right? Our approach to what's happening, or how we're experiencing these things that happen around us, a lot of times that's what creates either freedom and gratitude, or this cage that we can sometimes start to like resent, or that we don't even realize is shutting doors for ourselves. And so one of the things that has always been hard for me is travel, right? And so if you would have asked previous me, like 5 years ago, me, and said, Ashley, do you want to travel? Like, do you want to come somewhere? I had a lot of fear about that. I also was very much holding on to this idea that like, I'm not a traveler. I said things to people where I was like, oh, I don't really have that travel bug. I don't really need to That's not something that I need in my life. I'm very content at home. I'm very content in my tiny little sphere, right? And it doesn't mean that I didn't have to be content there, right? But in my head, it was like that was part of that bar that I had put in place was I had claimed it as part of my identity. I'm not a traveler, right? And then you asked and you asked and you asked, and actually through some business opportunities that we had together, I even said yes to a trip that was very outside of my comfort zone. I like flew on a plane by myself for the first time in my life in my 30s, right? Like that it's just it was a big deal, but I had to leave behind this idea that I'm not a traveler because I was somehow using it as almost like a protection because I didn't know. It wasn't even like I was afraid. I just didn't know what I was going to find. And I was happy where I was. But there's this whole idea of like the yes and, right? So like it didn't have to be I was either a traveler or I was happy at home. Like I can be a traveler and still love all the things that I've always loved at home, but I had to let go of that when I came to visit you. Like I had to let go of the fact that I'd never been in the car 9 hours by myself, right? Before. But doing that, it's like letting go of those things that keep us trapped and what I received because I said yes, right? Because I let go of this thing that would have kept me stuck and said yes to this thing that I didn't know what the end result was going to be. I mean, it's not like I'd ever visited your home before. I'd never been to Colorado. Like I'd never done all these things. But then what I was able to receive on the other side, right? It's the same thing with the book that we have coming out, right? Like Rooted to Rise, like I wanted to be an author when I was a little girl. Like I've always wanted to be an author. But in my brain, that was something that I had no control over. Like I don't know, I have to wait for somebody to discover me, I guess. I don't know. Right. But then it's like I had to leave behind all of the fear of like, well, what are people are going to think of me? Or how is this going to shift things? Or even like financially, like what does it look like to commit to, something like this? But you have to like say goodbye to some of that old stuff that's no longer serving you. So I don't know. Those are all the things that are in my mind right now.
And now you're a published author coming to Colorado again in 2 weeks.
I know. I
So
know. Well, I think that's what I want. It's what I'm excited to explore with you when we're diving into this in our group, right? I think there is such a negative, I don't know, vibe. I don't know a better word right now around this idea of saying goodbye. And I think it goes back to what you were talking about. Like people tend to be collectors of things, right? And it's like, even if I collected this thing, whether it's, a job or a relationship or an idea or a part of our identity or, a skill, even if we collected this thing and we either worked hard for it or it meant a lot to us or whatever in that moment, that we have to hold on to it forever. And that's not the truth. Like it can be okay to let something go to make room for whatever's next. So I feel like I've gotten to learn that lesson in a big way. And very much of that has come from my interactions with you. So I don't know. I'm really excited about this topic and
I
see
am
what we have a chance to dive into.
I'm so excited to walk through this with other people as well. Uh, we're not meant to do any of these topics alone. And I think that for me, that was my turning point
Mhm.
was when, being hurt by so many people from the very beginning of life and
Yep.
just like, I trust them, I get hurt. I trust, I get hurt. I trust, I get hurt. And the way that you can choose not to allow certain things to choose to hurt you, or if you're in some cases like honoring, I'm going to allow this to hurt me for a day and then I'm going to move on. So it's like honoring and dancing with all those emotions. And I think that that's really important for that whole, you were saying so many of these things were part of your identity. We develop so many of these things as coping mechanisms to protect ourselves.
Mhm.
And I know that for me, and I've seen it in my husband even, that like well, this has always served me. And I always ask questions of people, is it really serving you?
Hmm.
Or is it just familiar?
Uh-huh. Is it habit?
It's not even your comfort zone. Comfort zone is like something to reflect on as well.
Hmm.
Is it because a lot of people misuse that? Oh, it's my comfort zone. Well, how comfortable are you feeling these days?
Uh-huh. What a
And
great
I know that
question.
I've challenged you quite a bit to question yourself, is this really comfortable or is it just familiar? So that comfort zone and that familiar zone.
Mhm.
So sit in those two places. So
Well, it doesn't mean, again, that everything familiar has to go, nor does everything familiar have to stay, right? I think we get in these like all or nothing spaces, or like a this is how it's always done space, and it's that none of that is true, right? It's like every moment is what we make it, and we can choose in this moment today, what does it look like to hold on to things that are working for me? It doesn't mean that it's bad to hold on to something. It's not bad to stay somewhere that is working, right? But if I'm never reflecting on it, if I'm never actually looking at how it's serving me or not, then that's where I think we miss. And then somehow I think that that's where we get in our head like, oh, this thing wasn't meant for me, or I can't access this thing that I want, when the reality is I have some things that are actively in the way of that thing that I wanted. And so it's okay to take stock, and it's okay to do some analysis and decide, well, this is some stuff that, yeah, it's in the way right now, but it's also not serving me. So I can let
mhm.
that go, so I'm ready. Oh my gosh, what a cool topic. What a cool topic. I mean, I'm pumped.
A cool way to start a new year.
I feel like that is exactly right. Like leaving some things behind, or being able to work this year toward like saying goodbye to some things that aren't working anymore in whatever capacity that is, um, in order to make room for capacity, or for the abundance that is absolutely waiting on the other side. Rochelle, this is going to be great.
I love it.
All right. Well, make sure to like and comment and subscribe to our Transformational Truth podcast. If you're not in our group, make sure to join our group. If you're in our group, make sure to invite a friend. Like she said, these things were not meant to do alone. And so the more people that we have who are willing to dig in and talk about things like this at a deep level, the better we're all going to be. So there is an invitation for you at this table to be a part of these conversations and to dig into this work. And neither one of us could possibly communicate how much it's on our heart that we would love to have you there. So make sure to drop all of that, share this episode with some people, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who need it. I even know that I'm going to need it as we're working through all of this to continue it again. And we will see you on our next Transformational Truth Riff Off. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.